this is Scotty Sanders. Thank you for joining me for Facebook Live. So I hope everything's going well. You know, this is Monday, and I always talk about make Monday double Monday. I'm not sure if that worked out for me today, although I got a lot done with my wife. We're doing a little bit of a remodel at our home, so painters, picking out new furniture and new rug and those kind of things. But I had a great time with her. I feel like we got a lot done at our house today, and some other things along the way. But anyway, I got some good time with my wife. But I hope you're off to a great week. Listen, this is episode 51, and so tonight I'm going to be talking to you about why my biggest failure, one of my biggest failures, became a defining moment for me. And so I'm going to be pretty transparent with you tonight that I realized one of the things that when I originally planned this talk, I think it was probably episode 25, and then I moved it to 30-something, then to 40-something, and then it finally makes its debut at 51. And I think the reason why I kept pushing it, because sometimes sharing our biggest failures is difficult. None of us like to talk about the things that we failed at doing. And we all have failures in life. It doesn't make us a failure, but it's still painful to talk about those things. And so I could literally spend 3 or 4 or 5 hours with you, probably longer, sharing all the many failures I've had in life. Maybe you wouldn't have to take that long, but I can certainly go a long time. But in this 15 or so minutes, I'm going to just share one situation that was really at the time, it's pretty catastrophic. And, there were some mitigating factors that could have been put on some other people, but it still came back to me and having that responsibility. So some of you know a little bit about my background because I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather had a business, my dad took that over, and then I got to work in that business as a young person. When I was 15 years old, I was involved in sales. I became a sales manager. And at 17, I had an opportunity with some of my family to start my first business. And I know that's quite unusual. And I had some very fortunate opportunities that allowed me to do that. And I realized a lot of people may not have that, but I had it. So I started my first business at 17. And by the time I was 27, so 10 years later, this very small business out of this one little office area turned into roughly a $5 million business. I mean, it was pretty sizable. And going back to the early 1980s, $5 million it was a lot of money today. And so to be honest with you, I was really over my head, out of my depth, and just made a lot of bad decisions along the way. I made some good ones, but a lot of bad ones. And so I want to share with you one situation that was really one of those defining moments for me. There was a wake-up call in my life. So going back to 1986, August the 18th, 1986, which happened to be my daughter Jenny's 5th birthday, I get a phone call at 2:30 in the morning. Now, let me just tell you, this has been my experience. I've never gotten really good news after midnight on a phone call. You usually don't. It's usually someone's sick, someone's died, or something bad has happened to something you're involved in or someone you may know. And sure enough, I get this phone call from my brother-in-law, who was the manager for my Jackson, Mississippi market, and our store there was on fire, and it was going to be a total loss. So I get dressed and I drive to Jackson, Mississippi, and kind of seeing the building burn down. And it was pretty devastating. It really was. And so obviously, I couldn't walk through the building that night, but maybe a day or so later, as we're kind of figuring out what do we do in this situation, I walked through the building, and I remember walking through the building and just seeing everything destroyed, everything burned up. And I remember the odor, the smell, and I can even think about that now. And it became really so distasteful to me because it really, in some ways, represented some things that really shouldn't be that important to a person, right? Materialism and success and all of those things. And it was like this moment of realization of what was really important to me. And so anyway, it was a wake-up call for me for sure. So it was very catastrophic. And so thinking about, here I am in the situation where the building's burned down. So I'm thinking about my employees, I'm thinking about my vendors, the people I owe money to, my customers, and how do I take care of all that? It took about a year to get almost a year to reopen. So the loss of income and business during that time. And then you couple that with, we had this very fluke situation where I had changed our insurance company from one company to another, and literally the new insurance company was supposed to pick it up within minutes of the time that the store was broken into. And what kind of added insult to injury, the person that did this, it was an arson job, a former employee that we had to fire because he was stealing, broke in with some friends, stole some merchandise, and then torched the building. And so that was very hurtful on top of that. So just, a pretty catastrophic financial loss, the insurance issue, then it being a former employee. Well, because of the insurance issue, we ended up having to get a lawyer, litigation ensued, and we had to settle, and we took several $100,000. It was almost $500,000, the best I can recall, but it was pretty catastrophic. But we had to settle at that, because if we had taken the full loss, we would have just been completely out of business. All of our stores would have had to shut down. But it sent us reeling for sure. It was one of those things that was very, very difficult to recover, and we really never fully recovered from that. But why was it a defining moment? Again, thinking about walking through the building and seeing the devastation, and thinking about the insurance and the employees and people we owed money to, all of those things. So here's some things that came to my realization. First, my priorities were way off, and that became apparently clear to me in that moment, in this realization. Why had I put so much emphasis on this? Why was this so important to me? And so it really hit me at that moment. And then my motivation was about more, bigger, busier. I just remember I wanted to start more stores. I wanted to become the largest retailer of this certain product in the world, and I was number 4, and I wanted to be number 1. So it's about being bigger, being busier than ever. So that was one of the things that really hit me. And then something else that I use people to make money. Now that's hard to admit, and maybe a lot of people do that, but it really hit me that I used my employees. I used them. It's not that I didn't care about them, but if they couldn't make me money, why were they important to me, right? And so I used people to make money. And then the other thing that hit me, at the end of the day, it was really poor management on my part that we ever got in that situation with the insurance. And listen, I was ticked. I was upset with the insurance company that was involved in that they did not take some responsibility. But it was poor management on my part, not paying close enough to important details. Had I been paying close attention, I would have never let that happen. So it was really poor leadership, poor management on my part was the root issue there. That had I had proper insurance coverage, it would not have been as catastrophic as it was. So ultimately, and this is something you hate to admit too, and this has happened to me more than once in my life, but ultimately it was really my pride that put me in that situation to start out with. My pride is the one that made me want to start more stores and expand the business and focus on getting bigger. That was the thing that drove it, and that became very clear to me in that moment. So that failure, and it was a failure, it redirected my life. It was really one of the most difficult things that could happen to me, but it's the best thing that can happen to me. Maybe you can relate to that when you go through something tragic or difficult, that's a wake-up call for you, and it really points you in a different direction. So I wouldn't trade that for anything. As painful as it was, I needed that to happen. So that failure redirected my life. And let me tell you some things that it redirected me toward. So first one was, it really gave me some new insight to make sure that I pursued something more significant and a purpose bigger than me. Bigger than me. It wasn't about me and me having more stuff. It really became more about, how can I make a greater difference? How can I be a part of that? And so that was that moment of realization. Another thing is that it hit me as never prioritize anything over God. And then secondarily would be my family, but certainly, God would be first. And it wasn't that God was not important to me, but if you looked at my schedule, my time, where I spent my money, where my energy and passion was, it was certainly the things more of the world. And so it really helped me to think through what's really important to me at the end of the day. And here's another one. And it helped me to start thinking about, rather than using people to make money, my focus shifted more to, it's okay to make money, because if I make money, it gives me the ability to help more people. The more money I make, the greater ability I have to help people. So that became the motivator of making money, although that became a lot less important to me. But even with that, it was all about, how will this allow me to help more people? And some of that would be my family, friends, things that I wanted to support. And here's something else. Understand that bigger is not better. Better is better. Bigger is not better. Better is better. So that was another one of those realizations for me. So again, through something very tragic that was very difficult, it was humbling. I mean, it was humbling. It brought me to my knees. It really did. Not knowing if we were going to survive a week, a month, a year. And never fully recovered from that, honestly. Financially, it was such a big hit. So, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I don't talk to a lot of people about it because it's still somewhat painful, because I have to admit, my failure in that and my pride that got me in that situation. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. So I want you to think about it in your own life. Has there been something that's happened in your life where you failed at something? Not that you're a failure, but that you failed at something and it became a defining moment for you. And you've heard me say this before, but pain truly is a great teacher. That experience made me pay closer attention to what I committed to do and put my name on, and closer attention to certain key details. So lessons that I learned because of the pain that I went through. So maybe you've gone through some pain that's helped you along the way, that you won't make those same type mistakes. So what failures have you experienced? So think about that really became a defining moment for you. And again, as I look back now, that's been 32, 33 years ago. How many years? 33 years ago. As difficult as that was, and it's still painful today, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a defining moment for me. So failure can turn into something good if you don't let it overwhelm you. I hope this has been helpful to you tonight, and I would appreciate you hitting the share button. If you feel like there's maybe someone that needs to hear this word or this message, pass it along to some others. I would love to get your comments about tonight, about me sharing with you one of my greatest failures and how it became a defining moment to me. But listen, this is Scotty Sanders again, and my purpose is to encourage and empower others to live, lead, and to finish well. And I hope me sharing with this with you today has helped you in that regard. Well, I hope you lead well this week. Until next time we get together, take care.